Hello children, welcome back to the second part of the poem by Rabindranath Tagore, Upagupta. Let's recapitulate what we had learned yesterday in the first part of the poem. The poem is about the story of a Buddhist monk Upagupta, a disciple of Lord Buddha, and the dancing girl of Mathura, Vasavadatta. Vasavadatta was a famous and beautiful dancer. She was proud of her beauty, youth, and her wealth. Upagupta was an ascetic and epitome of kindness, wisdom, and selflessness. One dark night, Upagupta, the disciple of Buddha, had slept on the dusty road by the city wall of Mathura. Everywhere it was calm and quiet. Lamps were all out. Doors were all shut. Everyone had slept. It was quite dark everywhere. Above all, stars were hidden by the dark cloud in the sky. Vasavadatta, a dancing girl, was walking with a lamp in her hand. Without noticing down on the ground, she stumbled over the body of Upagupta, who was sleeping on the dusty ground. Suddenly he woke up and was extremely surprised. The light from the woman's lamp fell on his merciful eyes and he saw a beautiful woman standing before him. The woman was shining with her jewels. She had put on a pale blue color mantle. She was young and beautiful. She was proud of her youth and beauty. As she lowered her lamp, she saw a young man whose face was reflecting the charm of a simple and strict way of living. The young woman begged pardon for stumbling over his body without noticing him in the darkness. She requested him to kindly come to her home, saying the dirty ground was not fit for him. Upagupta told her gently to go back to her home and told that he would meet her when time was ripe. Suddenly, the black night showed its teeth with a flashing of lightning. A terrible storm arose from the corner of the sky and made a deep sound. The woman trembled in fear of some unknown danger and hurried towards her home. We shall now see about the remaining part of the poem. A year had not yet passed. It was evening of a day in April in spring season. So it was in the month of August during the rainy season, one dark night that Vasavadatta had met Upagupta. And a year had not yet passed. It was evening of a day in April. April season is the season of spring. The branches of the wayward trees were full of blossom. Gay notes of the flute came floating in the warm spring air from afar. Usually, spring is a season that symbolizes growth and prosperity. Most of the trees during the spring season will be covered with beautiful flowers. So, the wayside trees, the trees on either side of the roads, the branches were filled with beautiful flowers. And from far, a sweet melodious sound of the flute could be heard. The air was filled with a melodious sound of the flute. A year had not yet passed since Vasavadatta, a dancing woman, met Upagupta, a monk. It was evening of a day in April in spring season. The branches of the tree on either side of the road were filled with flowers. Light musical tone of a flute came floating in the warm spring air from far away distance. ಇನ್ನೂ ಒಂದು ವರ್ಷವೂ ಕಳೆದಿದ್ದಿಲ್ಲ. ವಸಂತ ಕಾಲದ ಏಪ್ರಿಲ್ ತಿಂಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಅದೊಂದು ಸಾಯಂಕಾಲವಾಗಿತ್ತು. ರಸ್ತೆಯ ಬದಿಯಲ್ಲಿದ್ದ ಮರಗಳ ಟೊಂಗೆಗಳು ಪುಷ್ಪಭರಿತವಾಗಿದ್ದವು. ಬಹುದೂರದಿಂದ ಕೊಳಲಿನ ನಾದ ತೇಲಿ ಬರುತ್ತಿತ್ತು. Upagupta passed through the city gates and stood at the base of the rampart. So Upagupta, he passed through the city gates. He was walking through the gates of the city. And he stood at the base of the city walls built for protection. Rampart means it's a high wide wall of earth. Earth means of mud. Built around usually a castle or a town. So it is usually built for protection. So he stood at the base of the city walls that was built for protection. Was that the woman lying at his feet in the shadow of the mango grove? Suddenly there he saw a woman lying at his feet in the mango grove. Grove means a close cluster of trees is called as grove. So there was a close cluster of mango trees over there. So in the shadow of that mango tree, lying at his feet, he found a woman. So who was that woman? That woman was none other than Vasava Datta, the beautiful dancer. ಉಪಗುಪ್ತನು ಆ ದಿನ ಪಟ್ಟಣದ ದ್ವಾರಗಳ ಮುಖಾಂತರ ನಡೆದು ಬಂದು ರಕ್ಷಣಾ ಕೋಟೆಗಳ ಗೋಡೆಗೆ ಆತುಕೊಂಡು ನಿಂತನು. ಮಾವಿನ ತೋಪಿನ ನೆರಳಲ್ಲಿ ಒಬ್ಬ ಹೆಣ್ಣು ಮಗಳನ್ನು ಮಲಗಿದ್ದನ್ನು ಕಂಡನು. Struck with black pestilence, her body spotted with sores of smallpox. Upagupta sees a woman lying at his feet in the mango grove. He sees that she was struck with, when she was affected with black pestilence. Pestilence is an infectious disease that usually spreads quickly and kills a lot of people. So what was that epidemic that had struck her? The epidemic that had struck her was smallpox. There were sores all over her body. She was hurriedly driven away from the town to avoid her poisonous contagion. So she was put out from the town so that this disease should not be spread to others. The ascetic sat by her side, took her head on his knees. Looking at her, Upagupta felt pity. He had sympathy towards her. She was thrown out from the place because of this contagious disease, and she was lying in the mango grove with her body filled with sores. So Upagupta, taking sympathy on her, took her head on his knees. So Vasavadatta was struck with the black deadly epidemic disease. Her body was spotted with sores of smallpox. She was driven out from the city because the poisonous disease might spread to others with her contact. So Upagupta sat by her side and took her head on his knees. He was filled with pity and sympathy looking at her condition or her plight. ಮಾವಿನ ತೋಪಿನ ನೆರಳಲ್ಲಿ ಒಬ್ಬ ಹೆಣ್ಣು ಮಗಳನ್ನು ಮಲಗಿದ್ದನ್ನು ಕಂಡನು. ಆಕೆಗೆ ಭಯಾನಕ ಸಾಂಕ್ರಾಮಿಕ ರೋಗ ಅಂಟಿಕೊಂಡಿತ್ತು. ಆಕಿನ ಮೈಯ ಮೇಲೆ ಹುಣ್ಣುಗಳು ಕಾಣಿಸಿಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದವು. ಅವಳ ಸಂಪರ್ಕದಿಂದ ರೋಗ ಹರಡಬಾರದೆಂದು ಪಟ್ಟಣದಿಂದ ಹೊರಗೆ ಹಾಕಲ್ಪಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಳು. ಉಪಗುಪ್ತನು ಆಕೆಯ ಬದಿಗೆ ಕುಳಿತು ಆಕೆಯ ತಲೆಯನ್ನು ತನ್ನ ತೊಡೆಯ ಮೇಲಿರಿಸಿಕೊಂಡನು. And moistened her lips with water and smeared her body with sandal balm. So Upagupta takes her on his knee and gives her water. He moistens her lips with water and he applies sandal balm over her body to soothe the pain. Looking at his concern towards her, Vasavadatta asks, "Who are you, merciful one?" Then Upagupta replies, "The time at last has come to visit you, and I am here," replied the young ascetic. Vasavadatta was moved by the care and concern shown by Upagupta towards her. Usually nobody goes and touches a person who is having smallpox because of the fear that they will also be affected by the disease in those days. But Upagupta saw her, had sympathy towards her and decided to take care of her. So he applies sandal balm or sandal paste over her body to soothe her pain, and then he will give her water to drink. Looking at the care and concern, Vasavadatta will ask him who he is. Then the young ascetic Upagupta will reply that the time at last had come to visit her. Remember, she had invited him to her place about 6 months back in the month of August. But at that time, Upagupta did not go to her house. Instead, he told her to continue her way. And now, when she was in pain and when she was in need, Vasavadatta was in pain and was in trouble because of the disease. At that time, Upagupta a good Samaritan, a good ascetic, goes to her and helps her. He says, at last the time has come to visit her. And so he is here. He kept his promise that he will visit her one day. And now he was there to fulfill the promise. ಉಪಗುಪ್ತನು ಆಕೆಯ ಬದಿಗೆ ಕುಳಿತು ಆಕೆಯ ತಲೆಯನ್ನು ತನ್ನ ತೊಡೆಯ ಮೇಲಿರಿಸಿಕೊಂಡನು. ನೀರನ್ನು ಬಾಯಲ್ಲಿ ಹಾಕಿ ಆಕೆಯ ತುಟಿಗಳನ್ನು ನೀರಿನಿಂದ ಒರೆಸಿ ಒದ್ದೆ ಮಾಡಿದನು. ನಂತರ ಆಕೆಯ ದೇಹದ ಮೇಲೆ ಗಂಧದ ಮುಲಾಮನ್ನು ಸವರಿ ಉಪಚರಿಸಿದನು. ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಹೊತ್ತಿನ ನಂತರ ದಯಾಳು ಉಪಗುಪ್ತನನ್ನು ಯಾರೆಂದು ಅವಳು ಪ್ರಶ್ನಿಸಿದಳು. ಆಗ ಅವನು, ಕೊನೆಗೂ ನಿನ್ನನ್ನು ಬೇಟೆಯಾಗುವ ಆ ಸಮಯ ಬಂದಿತು. ಈಗ ನಾನು ಇಲ್ಲಿದ್ದೇನೆ ಎಂದನು. ಅವನು ಆಕೆಗೆ ಕೊಟ್ಟ ವಚನದಂತೆ ನಡೆದುಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದನು. So far we have discussed the second part of the poem. We shall once recapitulate or revise what we have learnt in today's session. I'll tell a brief summary of the poem of what we have learnt today. A year had not yet passed since Vasavadatta, a dancing woman, met Upagupta, a monk. It was evening of a day in April in spring season. The branches of the trees on the wayside were heavy with flowers. Light-hearted musical tone of a flute came floating in the warm spring air from faraway distance. Upagupta passed through the city gates and stood on the base of the city walls built for protection. Suddenly, he saw a woman lying at his feet in the shadow of a mango grove. She was none other than Vasavadatta, the dancing woman. She was struck with a deadly epidemic disease. Her body was spotted with sores of smallpox. She was removed or driven out from the city because people feared that the poisonous disease might spread by her contact. Upagupta sat by her side and took her head on his knees. He applied her body with sandal balm. He made her lips wet with water. The woman asked him who he was. He then replied to her that at last the time had come to visit her, and he was there. So finally, Upagupta keeps up his word of meeting her when the time was right. And so when she was in need of his help, he went to her. So we complete your poem with this. The message that we get from this poem is we all should be like Upagupta, who was an epitome of kindness and sympathy. We should not be like Vasavadatta. Vasavadatta was proud of her beauty and her youth. We all should remember that our physical beauty or our external appearance is very short-lived. With time, it continues to fade. But what remains with us forever is our values like sympathy, kindness, and good human values. We all should try to follow the principles of Upagupta and try to be of help to others. We should not be proud of ourselves. We should be more inclined towards spirituality rather than materialistic values and materialistic things. Hope you have understood the poem. In case if there are any difficulties, we'll clarify it when the school reopens. Till then, stay from home itself. Stay home and stay safe.